Hello, welcome to Sunday. I hope you are having a wonderful time. I'm running a little late today. We had our 17-year anniversary yesterday, and we went out to Buck's restaurant, which was just fantastic. And oh my God, it was so good. Like, the food was so good, and we had cocktails and. Yeah, so this morning it was a little rough getting out of bed. But anyway, I think I've recovered enough to do a good reading, so there we go. So anyway, let us see. Okay, so last chapter, we worked on using glass as a template and creating bigger charms, which then, can make little tiny charms, using it as a template, burn it, boom. So obviously that was huge. That's a huge improvement over just the visualize and burn method. So at the end, Sandy says, hey, Jason, why don't you try a charm? And so Jason does, and so he turns it on and he realizes, wait a minute, this isn't anything like the healing I normally get. Even though T is a soul creation and can use a charm to its maximum extent, still this is hideously awful. Like, what the hell output? So anyway, so I'm just reading a last little bit of chapter 38. That'll bring us on to chapter 39, Charming Puzzle. Okay, my analytical side was getting excited now. What if this is what Leonardo da Vinci did with his designs? He always put something wrong in the layout, so if it got stolen, it wouldn't work for them. This has to be something like that, except whoever designed this charm didn't make it completely useless. I quickly relayed what I was seeing to the group, but I didn't zoom out or focus on them. I was on the hunt now. I was going to figure out what was going on with this charm and fix it. Chapter 39, Charming Puzzle. The first thing I did was take care of all the fake channels. Charms were designed to flow, and there were a lot of places that were filled up with magic and then just stopped. They weren't doing anything. Even though it was a charm, I still had complete control over my magic, so it was easy to pull my power out of those channels and collapse them behind me. It was shocking how many of them there were. At least a third of the logical connections served no purpose. Once I cleaned them all up, it was easy to see the healing charm was inside of what looked like a spider web. Most of the spider web was already filled up with magic, and if I had to guess, that was what was blocking the power of the healing charm. The spider web radiated out in sections, and only one section didn't have any magic in it. I counted the sections, 12, just like a clock. So that meant the charm was only working on 1/12 of its total capacity. I passed that info along and heard Sandy gasp. I didn't want to lose my connection though, or lose my concentration though, so I tuned everyone out again. I followed the flow of magic, and it wasn't hard to discover the spider that controlled the web. In the upper right part of the charm was a complex-looking rune with a bunch of logical connections radiating outward. I zoomed in for a closer look, and when I did, I could feel the rune calling for something. That seemed strange. I nosed around a bit, but couldn't figure out anything else. Looking at the flow, it was pretty easy to see how the spider got its power. There were 4 lines going into it, and they were all joined up inside. If I had to guess, the lines were just redundant power supplies. That way, if something happened to one power line, the other 3 could continue to do their business. I decided to test the theory by blocking the flow. I didn't collapse the channels yet, as I wasn't sure what was going to happen. What I hoped was the web would lose power and the full might of the magic charm, the healing charm, would shine out. The first few lines I blocked didn't make any difference, but once I blocked all the power to the spider, the whole charm shut down. That wasn't what I wanted. I restored power and then shut down the power lines again, but in a different order. As I suspected, I got the same result. This thing has a dead man switch, my analytical side said in his best British Sherlock Holmes voice. Whoever designed this charm does not want you to take off his spider, so he's put something in the design where the charm dies if the spider dies. Well, isn't that a kick in the old web spinners, I replied. Whoever made this is really attached to that section of the rune. It's almost like it's more important to them than the actual healing. My analytical side paused. That's because it is, he exclaimed. By Jove, I think you've got it. It's more important to them because it's some sort of membership rune. Do what? I was confused. Ask Sandy if you can borrow her charm bracelet and hold it close to your charm, my analytical side directed. I did as he wanted, and when the charm bracelet got close, 2 more sections of the web opened up. Oh, looked like we were onto something. Feel the magic coming off the spider, my analytical side continued. It should be finding matching spider runes in her other charms. I wouldn't have seen it if I had been looking for it, but there were tiny sparks of communication going on between the healing charm and a few of the charms on Sandy's bracelet. I picked one charm at random, zoomed in for a look, and sure enough, there was another spider and hidden web. So what are we looking at? I asked. What do you think is going on? I think this charm is part of a series, and the author of this charm wants you to buy all his other charms, my analytical side said smugly. So he's created an artificial need for the user to keep buying from him. He's throttled all of his charms way back, and if they sense the presence of other charms that are part of the set, then they will throttle less. It's devious as heck, but it would be easy to sell that way. Maybe he tells those who comes back that he found a special rune that works even better when its fellow runes are around. It's a special charm synergy something that only happens with his line of charms. The user buys more of his charms, and sure enough, they do work better together. I was just guessing that if Sandy had one charm in this series, she'd have others too. It looks like I was right. You called this a membership charm, I reminded him. Is this the series you're talking about? No, my analytical side shook his head. I think it goes even beyond that. If it was me setting this up, I'd make it so that having more charms only opened up about half of the capacity. To get to the rest, you'd have to buy a special membership charm. Let's use this charm as an example. There are 12 segments to the web, and only one segment is open by default. Sandy has some matching charms, so 2 more segments opened up. If I was making this, I'd limit the number of segments that opened for matching charms to 6. That way you'd get to half power. Then I'd sell a low membership charm that opened up 2 more. So now you're at 10. So you're at 8 segments. Then I'd sell a mid-membership charm that opened up the next 2, so now you're at 10. Finally, I have a special high tier of membership that unlocked everything. I'd either keep that for myself or sell it to my closest allies. That sounds logical to me, I told him. It's sort of like how Isabel structured her membership circles for the Louisville Mages. The main circle was basic charging with no other benefits. The inner circle got some power from draining simple creatures and plants. Then the inner circle drained people and creatures and gave out the most power. Ooh. Okay, the inner circle, blah, 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 blah. Then the inner circle drained people and creatures, which gave out the most power. Of course, they didn't realize that Isabel was taking their magic the whole time. Having the runes perform better would certainly ensure brand loyalty. I think this is how the collection set things up in their shops. I don't know for sure, of course, but it seems to fit. I took a moment and relayed all this to the group. When I did, I was scanning the logical connections, looking for the dead man's switch. I turned the spider on and off several times, looking for where the change happened. Fortunately, I didn't have to scan the whole charm. The cutoff had to happen before the healing rune powered up. but I couldn't see it. Then it occurred to me that it might be messing with the basic on-off rune for the charm, and that's where I found it. The switch was cleverly hidden as magic from the spider flowed into a channel and towards the on-off rune. If the magic stopped flowing from the spider, then the magic in the channel reversed, which turned the whole charm off. Without my level of sight and being able to actually see how the magic moved, this would have been impossible to find. I felt a thrill of excitement. I loved figuring out puzzles, and this had been a fun challenge. I fixed the dead man switch and then cut the power to the spider. This time, the spider and the web powered down, but the healing rune kept working. It worked! I took great satisfaction collapsing all the tunnels that powered the web and the spider, and then that took out at least another third of the lines, and what I was left with was much simpler. Before you call our changes finished, I do one last check over everything and look for any possible problems, my analytical side spoke up. Whoever made this was devious, and they had to figure that someone at some time would be able to figure out how to get rid of all their extra membership crap. If it was me, I'd leave one last surprise for the mix. I'd set up something where the charm worked, and then it would fail after it got used for a while. That way, it would hopefully fail the mage at a critical time and kill them outright. Or, if they're selling the modified charm, it would fail their customers and ruin their business. "You are devious," I exclaimed. "I love it. I'm glad you're on my side." He flashed me the Austin Powers, Dr. Evil pinky sign to the lips. I laughed and pretended to pet the evil cat. Together we laughed maniacally. That was too much fun, but time was ticking. Back to the project at hand. Now I was looking for a future problem. It was easy to spot. There were two channels that were very close together, and they both flowed in different directions. I didn't test it, but I was sure that if the wall between them collapsed, then the charm was either going to stop working or melt down or something. One channel had a normal amount of magic flowing in it, but the other channel was maxed out. I'd already gotten rid of the spider and the web, so it was too late to check, but I surmised that the magic flowing through that channel was at a normal capacity before. I moved over a bit and burned another wider channel before collapsing the old one. Now I knew where to look. I scanned all the active parts of the charm again, looking to see if there were any other problems. I found another channel that had a bit too much flow, but it didn't look to be any sort of booby trap. I just reburned the channel and made it a bit wider, and everything seemed fine. I zoomed out a bit, looking for any final problems, but everything seemed to be okay. My poor charm was a mess. It had collapsed tunnels everywhere. It looked like some ants had gotten strung out on acid and just started digging wherever they wanted. Still, the working parts of the charm were solid, and that's what I focused on to make the new template. I picked up the glass stick and quickly shaped it into the new healing charm. I didn't have a whole lot of glass, so the whole thing was a little over an inch wide. It was clear enough to see, though, and as I zoomed out, I realized everyone was leaned in, peering at my hand. "Is that your final version?" John asked. "For now, yes," I said. "At some point, we can go back and add flow to the remaining logical connections. I have other things I want to test tonight, though, so I'm moving on." "Alrighty then," John said, and picked up a fist-sized chunk of copper. "Where did that come from?" I asked in surprise. John was already forming the copper, so Sandy answered for him. John went down to his place and brought up a lot more metal for us to work with. Since you were completely remaking the healing charm, I wanted to have a new large template to work from, and I wanted it to be a lot more durable than glass. "That makes sense," I agreed, and snuggled up to Tyler while John worked. It only took a few minutes, and soon he had a 15-inch wide copper model from my template. Then he took Sandy's original glass model and coated it in copper too. Now it wasn't so fragile anymore. Sandy laid both models on the table side by side, and for a moment everyone was quiet, just taking in the differences. "This is absolutely amazing, Jason," she breathed. "I never thought I'd see the day where my healing charm would be so simple and so straightforward." "You knocked the number of lines down to a quarter of what they were," Annabeth said in wonder. "Are you sure this will still work?" "Not that I'm doubting you," she added quickly. It seems crazy that so much of the original charm was completely unnecessary." "The best way to test the new layout is for Sandy to burn it," I replied, and everyone quickly agreed. "Do you have enough magic left to burn another one?" I asked. "I do," she replied. "This new glass way of making charms lets me use only as much power as I need to burn it and nothing more. I never realized how much power I was wasting with the visualize and burn method." Sandy got to work making a tiny glass template of my new layout. Then John covered it in copper and she burned it in. "And now for the moment of truth," she said anxiously as she filled it with magic and turned it on. She didn't say anything aloud, but her face said it all. Her eyes got wide and she looked up in wonder. "There is no comparison," she finally said. "The old one feels like a candle, while the new one feels like the sun." She paused again, switching back and forth between the two charms. "Holy crap, this is insane." "Let me feel them," Annabeth said eagerly. Sandy healed her with the first charm and then with the other one. "Holy crap is right," Annabeth exclaimed. "This is amazing." John and Tyler wanted to feel too, so Sandy healed them as well. Then Annabeth wanted to feel the difference again, so Sandy went around everyone and demonstrated the two charms again. "This is what your healing is like?" Tyler asked me. He shook his head in disbelief. "No wonder you recover so quickly now." "Actually," my pause got everyone's attention. "I think the healing can be even better than that, and I want to try an experiment." "Sure." Sandy was so excited she was practically bouncing in her chair. She loved charms and this was rocking her world. "Whatever you want to try, let's do it." "Okay then," I said playfully, "but I think I need a refill." I held up my empty glass. "I'm on it," John said, jumping to his feet. I smiled at John's enthusiasm. Usually he teased Sandy about how much she was into her charms and then wandered away when he got bored with all the magic talk. Tonight, though, he was into it. After my refill, I took a deep pull, letting the suspense build. This was so much fun. "Intentions matter," I said finally. "Magic is more than just an impartial force, like gravity or electricity. Magic can sense what we want, and it generally does its best to be helpful. As Biddy told us, old-time mages did amazing things and all they had were runes. Now with charms, we use logical connections to tell the magic what to do. This allows for supernaturals to do things like keep our coffee cups refilled and warm without knowing how it was done." I paused again and took another sip. John's ale really was delicious. "That gives supernaturals a wide range of abilities, but it makes everything so impersonal, and I think that robs charms of a lot of their power. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about charms having aspect, and the lower the aspect, the better. But what if you could use that aspect? What if you made a healing charm that was so focused and so personal, it gave you double the healing power of the charm you had now? Wouldn't that change the game for you?" Sandy nodded, lost in thought. "It would certainly change a lot," she said. "I'd be able to train like you and Annabeth do. I'd be able to throw myself fully into every battle and not have to worry about my recovery time. It would make a big difference. Even in real battles, I'd be able to fight harder for longer, and when I got tired, I'd be able to recover faster. And we're talking about the healing rune right now, but what if I could throw fireballs faster and harder? What if I had a shield charm that lasted longer? This could be a game changer in battles, and there are a lot of non-violent charms I have too. I don't exactly know where we're going to go with all this yet, and how we're actually going to make it work, but this is exciting." Sandy was seeing the possibilities. I looked over at John and gave him a questioning look. I got hit hard today, he admitted. It's something I can handle, and it's not the worst that's happened to me. But I agree with what Sandy said. If I could fight at that level and then recover easily, it would be so wonderful for me. Sandy reached over and gave his hand a squeeze. I had a feeling that John wasn't usually vulnerable like this. He was in a safe space, though, and I was glad he felt like he could share the fact that he couldn't shrug off all that damage. Sandy and John shared a look of understanding and love that just made my heart melt. Before I could get too caught up in my feelings, I looked over at Annabeth. I run 3 healing charms right now, she said, and while that's a lot of healing, it's still not enough. I'm like John. I ache and I'm sore, but I just push through it. I've always been grateful that I can sing 3 charms at once, as most mages can only use 1. But I feel like I could do better than that? Oh, hell yeah. Whatever it takes, count me in. I looked over at the wonderful man holding my hand. What about you, Tyler? I asked. He gave a deep sigh. I don't know. He seemed lost for words, and I wondered if this had something to do with his past. He'd cut himself and healed that cut right in front of my eyes, so I already knew he could do amazing things. I don't know if you can help me, Jason, he said, looking deep in my eyes. It's just that, as an incubus, I'm focused on the physical body. Because of who I am, the power I've gotten, and what I've been through, I already have a partially transformed body that already lets me heal from minor injuries. I do have other injuries, though. I have some things I just haven't set right. I'm not sure if a simple healing charm will come close to fixing something like that, though. He looked so sad as I leaned over and kissed him. I have an idea for you too, I told him. I don't know if it will work, but I think it might. Then I will certainly give it a shot, he said firmly. He looked like a man that was willing to try, but afraid to hope. I gave his hand a squeeze in support and turned back to Sandy. Okay then, here's what I need you to do. I want you to burn the healing charm again, but this time I want you to do it with a clear intention. Sandy looked confused, so I hurried to explain. What I mean by that is, I want you to be fully aware of the charm and what it's going to do. In this case, to have the most impact, I want you to make the charm that only you will use, and it will only be used to heal yourself. Sandy looked surprised, but she nodded and kept listening. I know this is limiting the scope of this charm a lot, but you're making something that is going to have a huge impact on your life. So it's okay to have a charm that is just for you. What I want you to do is create an image of yourself holding this charm, and it's one of the most precious things you own. You're putting your power into the charm, and it's shining its power on you like warm sunlight. You're letting all that power in, and it's healing you, and you feel great. You're feeling better than you've ever felt before. No aches, pains, bruises, cuts, or anything like that. This healing rune is like a little nuclear reactor, and you are transforming into the best that you can possibly be. I paused to let all that sink in. Got it? Yeah, she said, although I have to say this is so different from anything I've done with my charms before. My focus before has always been to make as neutral a charm as possible, so it will work for as many people as possible. I've focused on the technicalities of the charm and the layout. I've never focused on the outcome before, and I've certainly never limited a charm's focus to just one person. I know it seems strange, I replied. Just because of this charm, just think of this charm like it's alive, like it's a tiny furry cat, and it wants to snuggle up with you and heal all your aches and pains. Sandy just laughed. That sounds crazy, but I think I get it. She looked at John. Are you ready? Sure thing, he said happily. Let's make a healing cat together. They both chuckled together, and then Sandy started making her tiny glass model. John covered it in copper, and then Sandy started adding power. This time she closed her eyes and added the power very slowly. Towards the end, she really got into it and started humming. I don't know what the tune was, but it seemed to help. She even smiled and rocked in her chair a bit. It was clear that Sandy was trying her best and really getting into the intention of the moment. The charm burned in with a little pop, and then it was ready. Sandy opened her eyes and looked at the little disc in wonder. "It feels so different," she exclaimed. Then she picked up her other charm and held it in her other hand. "Wow, it's like night and day. This charm," she raised her hand with the first charm she'd made with my new design, "it feels like it's friendly, but nothing more than that. This charm, on the other hand, feels like it's my best friend." She raised her hand with the charm she just made with intention. "That charm was made by you and for you, so I'd only put your magic in that charm," I suggested. I wouldn't suggest putting any neutral magic in it. Now fill it up and give it a try." Sandy filled it up about halfway and then turned it on. Again, her eyes grew big with wonder. "Oh my goodness," she breathed. "This is amazing, just amazing." She paused, filling it all the way with her magic, and then turned it on again. "Jason, this is night and day. I thought the first healing charm I made with the new design was beyond anything I'd imagined, but this charm blows that one away." She looked at everyone else. "I wish I could share this with you, but I can't. I'm so sorry. You all are just going to have to take my word for it." She looked back at me. "I'm a believer now. Intentions matter." She laughed and held the healing charm tightly to her chest. "It feels so good, I don't want to turn it off." "Well, you're going to have to turn it off for now," I said, "as you need to help John make his very own healing charm." "Say what?" John looked surprised. "You have Sandy's magic now," I told him, "so you can burn charms too. We have a new layout, and you know how to make charms with intentions. You have all the pieces you need, and Sandy's going to be right there with you, helping you. So get to it." John balked a bit more, but I could see it was just nervousness over trying something new. There was an excitement that took over when he realized he really was going to be making his first charm. I think he'd really been interested in charms for a long time, but he just figured a natural could never make a charm, so he'd gone out of his way to appear bored by the whole thing. Once he got started, he took over and hardly asked for any help at all. He wasn't used to working with glass, so he made his tiny template out of copper. Then he covered it with silver. I guess it didn't really matter, as he could sense copper just as easily as glass. All of John's art was personal to him, so he had no problems imagining that this little charm would become his best healing buddy. Once it burned in, he added his own magic and turned it on. The look on his face was priceless. He laughed with joy. Then he teared up a bit. He hugged it to his chest, and he didn't want to turn it off either. Sandy kissed him and hugged him, and they shared a long moment together. Sandy could finally truly share one of the great joys of her life with her husband and best friend. On the other hand, this was John's first attempt at using his new mage powers, and it seemed like it was everything he hoped it would be, and more. When it became obvious they weren't coming out of their little happy bubble for a few minutes, I turned to Annabeth. "I have a different idea for you," I told her with a happy grin. "But before I tell you, I have to ask, have you burned a charm yourself yet?" Annabeth got a pained look and shook her head. "No, I haven't," she admitted. "I don't have visual magic, so I couldn't hold a pattern in my head and burn it like Sandy does. I've made what I call happy charms from little pieces of art John made for me." "I remember them," I replied. "You were showing me how you sang to them on our first day in the park. We got attacked by the stone golem right after that, so I haven't thought much about them until now." "I still make little charms like that and sell them on Etsy," Annabeth continued, "but I don't think I can make a pattern like you want, Jason. I've tried before. Actually, I've tried several times, but my magic just doesn't work like that." She looked so sad and frustrated and reminded me that I wasn't the only one with charm issues. I couldn't use regular charms and she couldn't burn them. I was certain, however, that today she was going to have a breakthrough. So you willing to try one more time? I gave her an encouraging smile. This won't work if you stay frustrated. Intentions matter, and your frustration will create a charm that fights you every step of the way. She frowned, and for a moment she looked frustrated about being frustrated. Just remember what you taught me, I said. Accept that you've tried before and it didn't work. That is all. Now you're going to try a different way. I could see her cycling through her emotions. Upset, sadness, hope, and finally acceptance. Her shoulders straightened, she sat up taller, and her face lit up with her trademark happy smile. You're right, she said. This is a new day and a different attempt. Let's make it happen. Now, what do you want me to do first? I picked up one of the glass rods and gave it to her. I want you to transform this glass rod into a healing rune. Don't worry about the whole charm, as you aren't going to be making that. Instead, just get used to working with glass and making the rune. She took the glass and looked at it doubtfully. I was sure she was still having the same questions of how to use sound to transform glass. This time, I don't want you to focus on your regular magic, I said. Instead, I want you to focus on your mark of the deep earth and use that to feel the glass. She looked surprised by the idea, but she nodded, looked at the glass again, and suddenly it transformed. She was so shocked she almost dropped it. I did it, she exclaimed. She looked at the rod again, and this time it transformed into a flower. I did it again. She was so happy she started hopping up and down, and it was so easy. Tyler and I gave her big hugs to celebrate. She sat back down again and changed the glass into a bunch of different things. A dog, a boat, a bumblebee, and then back to a flower. She was so thrilled with her new ability. She was as thrilled with her new ability as the centaurs had been in the spinning tale. Now you've gotten the hang of using the glass, let's focus on making the healing rune, I suggested. That got us back on track, and she practiced making the rune, then turning the glass into the ball, and then making the rune again. She was using her natural sight to figure out the healing rune, and it was taking some effort to get it right. I let her work on that for several minutes, as I wanted her to feel very confident in her glass manipulation abilities. I think I've almost got it, she said. What do you want me to do now? Now, I want you to go to the next level and do something only you can do, I replied. I want you to listen to the healing rune. I want you to understand its essence. Then, let the glass flow into the same shape so it has the same essence. She nodded and spent a moment looking at the healing rune in the middle of Sandy's big copper template. Then she looked down at her hand, and the glass formed into a perfect healing rune. Oh, wow, she said in wonder. I did it. Yes, you did, I laughed. And because you can hear the rune, you already know it's perfect. Now, do it one more time just so you're confident you can repeat the results. Then spend a moment and really listen to the rune and see if there's anything you want to add to it or take away to make it completely your own. Annabeth couldn't stop looking at the glass rune, but she eventually squished it flat and started over. Once again, the glass floated in the exact shape of the healing rune. She then spent another minute just listening to the rune and seeing if she wanted to change anything. It's perfect just the way it is, she said firmly. Good, I replied. Now make the rune smaller until it's the right size for a charm. That was super easy for her. She pulled glass out of the design until the healing rune was only about 1/8 of an inch wide. John, if you would be so kind as to cover with copper, I asked. He and Sandy had finished with their moment, and they were now tuned into Annabeth and what she was making. Aren't you going to make the whole charm? He rumbled. Nope, I gave Annabeth a sly smile. You sing the 3 charms right now, which makes sure they all work in harmony. I think your singing or humming can completely replace the charm itself and act like my soul creations. That means you have direct access to the right rune and perfect intention with nothing in the way. I think your results are going to be even better than if you made a normal healing charm. Annabeth looked both thoughtful and excited. Plus, I think once the charm part is out of the way, you're going to be able to activate as many healing runes as you want. You won't be limited to 3 anymore. Now she looked really excited as John easily covered the glass with copper. "Can you still feel the glass?" I asked. "Oh yeah," Annabeth replied happily. "It's singing to me." It was? That was interesting. "Stop!" my analytical side shouted. "I'm stopped," I replied. "What's the matter?" "You were going to have her burn the rune, just like normal," my analytical side noted. "Yes, that was the plan," I said. "What if she doesn't burn the rune?" he suggested. "What if instead she just sings to the glass and the glass rune does the healing?" "Will that work?" I questioned. "Doesn't the power of the charm come from magic flowing in the channels?" "I think it needs magic in the shape of a rune, but it doesn't have to be channels," my analytical side said in his Sherlock Holmes, "Aha, I've solved the case" voice. "I'm thinking the whole concept of channels came about so charms could be turned on and off using neutral power. When the power source is a mage, they can just turn it on and off however they want. In this case, Annabeth can hear the glass, so she can sing to it, give it magic, and it can heal her. Actually, if she burns the glass, she won't be able to sing to it anymore, since she isn't a visual mage and isn't used to flowing her magic in the usual way. She may actually not be able to use the rune, or at least not as well." "Well, let's give it a try," I agreed. "It makes sense, and we're doing all kinds of experiments tonight, so what's one more new thing?" I blinked out of my little chat to find everyone looking at me. I guess it looked like I just spaced out to them. "Annabeth, I want you to sing to the glass again," I told her. "But this time, I want you to put your intention behind it. You're singing to this beautiful rune you've made, and the rune is going to sing back in a way your body and magic understands, and it's going to heal you." "I'm not going to burn it in?" Annabeth asked, and she sounded relieved. I think she was back to being nervous about getting her magic to flow like other mages do. "Nope," I replied. "You're an Audible mage, so let's try it this way first." "Okay," she said happily, and started humming to her little rune charm. I could tell the moment it worked as her face lit up in wonder. "Holy cow, this is intense." She hummed some more. "This is way more powerful than the 3 charms I've been working with. I feel better already." I looked at Sandy, John, and Annabeth. They all held their little healing charms like they were the most precious thing in the world. I felt a glow of pride for them, and for myself, for being able to help them make this giant leap. I love it when my ideas work out. Now it was time for Tyler. Annabeth and John started working on another rune charm, so I picked up a rod of glass and gave it to Tyler. "Are you ready to do this?" I asked. He looked at it like I just handed him a snake. "I'm not sure I can," he said doubtfully. "I know you talked about the Centaur natural shaping glass, but they went through the shrine. I'm just a normal natural. I don't know if this will work for me." "What would you tell a young gay boy who was nervous about having sex for the first time?" I asked. He gave me a quizzical look. I told him to just relax and enjoy the process. His body knows what to do. Once his first time is complete, he'll be ready to really enjoy the next time. "Well then," I kissed him, "I think you just need to relax and enjoy the process. Your magic knows what to do. Once you've made your first rune, you won't have performance anxiety anymore." He laughed and kissed me back. "You are too smart for your own good." "I hope so," I laughed. "Now, no more distractions. We are going to do the same process as we did for Annabeth. Let's start with the glass, fill the rod, and change it into whatever you want." Tyler nodded and got a serious look settled onto his face. He stared at the rod, and nothing happened. He shifted the rod slightly in his hand and tried again. Nothing. He scowled, gripped the glass tightly, and tried again. He was clearly giving it all, but nothing happened. He reminded me of CL when he was first trying to make his glass change. "Stop for a sec," I told him soothingly as I put my hand on his shoulder. Then I got slightly distracted by how nice his shoulders felt. "Focus, Jason, focus. This isn't something that requires a lot of force," I told him. "You have plenty of power to make that rod do whatever you want it to do. The only thing that's missing is a connection to the glass." Then I thought of something and gave him a wicked smile. Instead of thinking of this as a glass rod, thinking of it as another type of rod. You're holding a handsome man's rod in your hand and you're tickling it with your power. I was going to say more, but Tyler gave me a wicked grin of his own, and suddenly he was holding a perfectly formed Johnson. It happened almost instantly, and Tyler jumped in surprise. The schlong wasn't very long, as the rod didn't hold a lot of glass, but it had clearly transformed. "Holy crap," he explained. "It worked." I just laughed and gave him a congratulatory kiss on the cheek. He looked at the glass again and transformed it into the shape of a rubber ducky. It seemed like a strange choice, but at least the glass was changing for him. "Wow," he was lost in wonder. "This is just amazing. I never thought I would actually be able to do this." He changed it into a fork, then a knife, then a bear. "It's so simple," he said. It's the same thing I always do, only different." "Most things in life usually are," I said wisely. "Life is all the same, except for when it's different." I was teasing him a bit, but he was so caught up in the glass he didn't notice. I thought it was interesting that even Tyler, with all his unique power and battle ability, still found such joy and fascination in transforming glass. John made several other shapes, and I finally had to get his attention and get him focused again. "Let's focus on your next step, which is making a healing rune," I suggested. "Sure," he said, but he seemed a bit sad at having to stop playing. He seemed a bit sad to have to stop playing. I thought he would do what Annabeth did and try to make the rune by looking at the master charm. Instead, he took his left hand and touched the copper healing charm. I saw his incubus magic encase the healing rune, and suddenly he looked at me in shock. "It's alive," he explained. "Well, not exactly alive like a person, but it's responding to me. This is wild." "I'm still learning," I told him, "so tell me what you're doing and how it's feeling." "I'm an incubus. I touch people with my ability. I used to have to physically touch them, but in the last 20 years or so, I can just project my power and it touches them. When I do, I get a feeling of who they are as a person. When I first started, I wouldn't learn that much. I'd just get a basic feeling of how the person was feeling emotionally and how horny they were. Here recently, I've been able to learn a lot more than that. Now I get a broad sense of who they are emotionally, what they're feeling now, how their overall health is, and what they are repressing. I can tell how they are doing physically. I can also tell how they are doing physically. I can tell how strong they are, how good their cardiovascular system is, and if they were injured recently or dealing with older problems. It's been so much easier to get a client physically and emotionally aroused, and now I can follow the changes in their body and control how often and how long they climaxed. When he talked about the rod on my hand being a penis, I touched it the same way, and that's what allowed me to start controlling the glass. I thought I could do the same thing for the rune. Annabeth listened to the rune, so maybe I could touch it? It turns out I was right. When I touched the rune like an incubus, it turned it on somehow. I can feel my physical magic getting sharper, more in focus. "That sounds pretty neat," I replied. "I was hoping that you would be able to do a lot more with a rune than a charm. My thought was that your healing abilities would work directly with the rune. Basically, your whole body is a charm, and you just need to switch out runes. Anyway, to get us back on track, can you use what you're feeling from the template to create your rune in the glass?" "I think so," Tyler replied, and then, within moments, formed a perfect healing rune out of the glass. Then he shrunk it down to charm size and had John cover it with copper. "I don't think I need to burn this," Tyler said, holding his new rune close. "I can hear the glass, and it's perfect just the way it is." Then he did something completely unexpected. He put the rune in his chest, and it sank into his body. I blinked at him in shock. "What the heck did you do?" "I just put it inside me," he said, like it was no big deal. I don't want to lose it, and I can still feel it and use it. If anything, I can put it right by the areas I want to heal and make sure they get the full benefit." "Sure, why not?" I just laughed. "I guess there's no more crazy or amazing thing I guess that's one more crazy or amazing blah blah blah. Oh, blah. Sorry. Sure, why not? I laughed. I guess that's no more crazy or amazing than anything else that's happened tonight. Exactly, Tyler agreed, totally missing the sarcasm. We burned more charms and runes before we got down to serious drinking. Annabeth made 3 more runes before she said that was enough. She needed to get used to that level of healing power before she added more. She also burned a regular healing charm so she could recover even when she was sleeping. Making 1 regular charm wore her out, and she said she needed to recover before she made another. Sandy and John both burned another personal charm, and then Sandy made a healing charm she wanted to send to Mop Top. This time she set up her intention that the charm could be used by anyone to heal anyone. I was curious to see what Mop Top would think about it. That took all the spare magic she had, so she joined in drinking the night away. For the rest of the evening we played cards, told stories, and even sang songs with Annabeth. Sandy made a whole bunch of chocolate chip cookies, and for a while we played poker using cookies as poker chips. They were delicious, so I turned up my poker skills and won as many as I could. It wasn't easy because John ate everything in front of him and then tried to wager on credit. Tyler told him that wasn't how it worked, but I noticed he was eating all his cookies too. Sandy made a lot more, and by the wee hours of the morning, even I had had enough. Somewhere in here, I lost the ability to stay upright, and Tyler decided it was time to say goodnight. I grabbed Eggie, gave him a big wet kiss, and started singing, "This vase is on fire." I'm sure I sang notes that would make Alicia Keys want to stab her ears with an ice pick, but I thought the song was creative as hell. I tried to make it to the door on my own, but that wasn't happening, so Tyler picked me up and carried me. I wasn't letting Eggie go, so he had his hands full with me, a vase, and its flowers. Mr. Tubbles decided he wanted to be carried also, so he hopped up on me as well. I thought it was a wonderful idea, so I loudly declared the more the merrier, and Bermuda hopped up as well. I'm sure we looked like a clown car as Tyler carried all of us up to my bedroom. Tyler got me undressed and into bed, and we all settled into our normal spots. Mr. Tubbles was on Tyler's pillow, and Bermuda was on mine. Tyler's naked body snuggled up behind me, and his strong arm wrapped around me. I felt safe and loved. This had been a wonderful evening, and I wanted to stay awake and savor the last possible moments. But the soft breeze of the fan cooled me, and the sounds of the ocean soothed me. Before I knew it, I was asleep. And that ends our day. All right, everybody. I will see you next week.